Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 3-for-1 Sky Fantasy Podcast and Fantasy Football Hub. Paul, how is your Sky weekend going so far?
I feel it's went okay. Okay to good.
You're in the minority, I think.
Well, I went down in 3,000 in rank, which
Fantastic.
doesn't sound like I had a great week, but I think when you look at some of the leagues that I'm in, like mini leagues competitive, I've actually went up in most of my mini leagues. I think it's a lot of picks that were done at the start of the season from maybe less engaged managers. You know, Trippier's done well and his ownership's like 30% or whatnot. So yeah, I'm okay. I've still got Onana in goals, so it's probably the one biggest concern in my team just now. But yeah, all in all, I'm pretty relatively happy with how I've gone. I've still not used any more transfers, so I've got those in the back burner to pick up as we go.
I can't believe the drop in rank I had. Mind you, I can't believe the points. I think I scored 28 points this week, which is pretty horrendous. The Saliba move definitely backfired on me, and Estepine just gave me a good old kick in the bollocks with the own goal after conceding the 6. Thanks for that, buddy. But
you were lucky he got taken off when he did.
Yeah. The points stop then, don't they? In Sky, they don't in FPL, do they? I think they not in FPL. No, in some of the other games they carry on, don't they? Dream Team and that. But, just awful week this week. I think it's one of the worst all round weekends I've had in any like ever. Even in FPL, I had Trippier and Saka. I was thinking, I've done well there. Let's look at my rank rise, and I had like a 30% rank fall. I was like, what the hell? Who has even possibly got? So Nightmare in Telegraph, double my rank in Telegraph, double my rank in Dream Team, triple my rank in Sky. Happy weekends, everyone. The Saliba one is hurting me. I think in hindsight, I know it's always in hindsight, but that I'm gonna have to get him back at some point, which is really annoying. I'm using any transfers.
It's only good in hindsight if you learn from it and not do something like that again. As like, I was speaking to someone else about the Awonyi situation, right? He's obviously been largely underwhelming in the 2 single game days, but having those 2 single game days coming up and having Jackson in my team, if I was to be in that position again, would I make that move again?
Yeah, exactly.
Probably would. I've gained 13 points from it, and that's without him. With only a single assist in there. So,
Arsenal's fixtures improve again, don't they? I think in 2 game weeks' time they got Man City, and I can't remember who they got after that, but then they got a nice run.
Chelsea.
That's it. And then they have Sheffield United, don't they? And the way Chelsea are playing, that's going to be likely a 1-0 Arsenal anyway, that one, isn't it? So, but we live and learn. Estepine, he got off to a flyer, didn't he? He looked so dangerous, but what he gives, he had a shot on target in the first 5 or 10 minutes against Villa. I'm thinking, here we go. It's gonna be one of those games. Phew, unbelievable.
Fullbacks in Sky just don't think they're good assets. Although when Trippier knocks in a 15-pointer, I still sit on that perch.
I know, I'm using any subs. Still got Onana. Got like a very rough plan for the next week or 2. So I'll probably end up using another 2 or 3 transfers maybe, which is kind of in line with the 1 a game week thing, which I'm trying to stick to. Just hoping, I suppose, that all around us people are using some. I did see quite a few managers had Watkins, which quite a few established engaged managers had Watkins. So well done to you guys, because that was an absolute mega haul, that was, wasn't it? Unbelievable. So very well played there. Windy's in the chat first as usual. Baker97 is in. Joseph, Graham Craig, Joseph Robinson says, sick of Saka donating my Sky FF points to his teammates. Yeah, two penalties and just gave him away, didn't he? You can understand why, but it is frustrating when you pick him. Part of the big reason we pick him is that he's on penalties. Bobby Shearer is in asking around Sanchez and Enzo for this evening. We'll talk about this evening's game in a little bit. Rich Darley says, you're able to give a shout to my brother-in-law Martin. Now we both know we watch the show. That is brilliant. So these 2 brothers have been watching us separately, and Rich Darley and Martin Darley. You sly dogs for all these months or years. There you are. Big shout out there. Paul Kendo, John Acornley, Arwin Voble's having a smashing season in all formats. Arwin, Sam D Taylor, Dave Baxter says, trust we've all had an awful Sky weekend. Well, Paul hasn't, as usual. I have David.
I did go down in 3,000 in rank. I was just not that disappointed by it. I thought I did okay.
Loads of others in. Thank you so much for joining us. Quick check on transfer count. Ridiculous numbers. Top 5,000 down from 37 to 35. Top 1,000, 33 to 30. Top 100, 29 to 25. And top 10, 27 down to 23 transfers. There's not much point dwelling on all that. Anything to mention at all, Paul, on transfer count or anything at the moment?
How many have you used?
6.
6, the same as me. I'm not. I don't look at the transfer counts until Christmas time anyway. I'm pretty happy with how I'm set up, and I've got a plan to use 2 or 3 transfers, which I'll talk a bit more about later on in the pod. But yeah, pretty happy with the counts, and it does feel like they're using them at the top even quicker than what previous seasons.
But I think it's quicker than last year, and I also think that the average amongst engaged managers seems to be quicker. We touched on this last week, but the way some of the single game days have fallen, the way certain teams have landed with a game on a Sunday and things, these have just been like hygiene sort of moves, haven't they? So they've all been reasonably obvious.
And the fact that Awonye and Buemo and Bear and Nakamba, etc., and all the Chelsea players today, that people will be wanting rid of them pretty quickly afterwards, does feel like that the momentum and transfer usage isn't going to stop, and the emergence of some players, which I know we'll talk about as well in another section.
Let's talk to that section now, the emergence of some players. We've got our shopping list, and on it we've got Trippier, back-to-back hauls, absolutely superb, well done to those. Yeah, and as you mentioned, Paul, a lot of his ownership in lots of formats has been high right from the start, haven't they? Even though their fixtures were awful, but he's coming back now, and they're really profiting. And Heung-min Son at the moment, even though he has got some kind of slight knock which he's carrying, he's looking. I tell you what, his finishes in his last 2 games have been absolutely fantastic. They're the kind of finishes that, don't get me wrong, I'm Harry Kane's biggest fan, but Kane hasn't got that pace that Son's got, and it's twice he's done it now. He's burst in between the centre backs, and that goal he scored against Liverpool, he also scored against Arsenal, didn't he? But he kind of burst in and just got his toe on it and deflected it in. He looks absolutely fantastic in that new role. 9.7 million midfielder. Ollie Watkins, obviously the name on everyone's lips. I'm not sure about you, Paul, but I was waiting until the day, probably that day we need for single game day, just to look at who was the player to get. Watkins hadn't scored, so far this season in with a bang. Has he changed your mind on Watkins and Diaby, or is that too obvious?
Well, you could call me out for this if you so choose. I was doing the match of the day challenge on Saturday, so didn't watch any football at all during the day. All I had known, and I forgot to turn the notifications off on the FPL app, was that Watkins got man of the match in the early game because I got the notification up. I hadn't seen any other scores from any other fixtures, and so I was bored because I wasn't watching the football. I even watched the Scottish highlights at night.
Oh, you must have been bored.
Testify, and Hibs drew 0-0, and I knew that going in to watch it as well. So I sat and I'll talk a bit later on about the kind of overhaul team that I've picked and what I need to do to get there. But what came apparent when I was working through it in my head was the volume of midfielders needed, and therefore I had earmarked Watkins over Diaby because of the formation allowances rather than him being the better asset. So I wasn't predicting the 3 goals and 2 assists, but I had almost set my sights on picking him because he was a forward rather than anything else. So that just doubles up with the fact that he's now picked up some great form as well.
Yeah, I was going on Watkins just before he's just proven, and who can forget last year he went through this run and his shots on target are just insane, and he gets them all the time. And even though Diaby looks like a really good player, he's kind of unproven in this league so far, I think. And Watkins is just proven. He was absolutely superb last year. So yeah, it looks like he could be the go-to man. The fourth one across, Paul didn't recognise on this list. So well done to anyone if you recognised him before I'll call him out, but it's Birdley's Jordan Bayer. Who would have known that he would be such a popular talking point amongst Sky managers? But we're going to talk about him a little bit as well. And Matty Cash is basically playing as like in a Mo Salah role on that right hand side of that Villa defense as well. Looks so dangerous. I think he's had something like 5 shots on target in the last 3 games and assist, and it looks really good. So yeah, what are your thoughts on these players, Paul?
I do have concerns about Cash long term, and I know that there was thoughts of inverting both fullbacks against the opposition in pre-season. So Alex Moreno's been out for the season to date, and I know that they've been playing Digne and Cash recently, but also I've got the opinion that at some point in time they'll play inverted fullbacks and they'll cut across, and perhaps Cash either will invert or he'll be rotated a little bit more down the line. He's only 7.7 as well, and you compare him to the other Villa defenders. It's obviously good value there, but I do have concerns that we've got the international break coming up, and I know Alex Moreno had a slight setback. I appreciate Cash plays on the right and Moreno plays on the left. I appreciate that, but I just think with Moreno and the team that they'll want more cover to tuck in on the right. So he's one that I won't be looking at from Villa's perspective. But Martinez and goals is an option to move on from Onana, and yeah, Watkins and Diaby are the two for me. Albeit, like defensive, they look a lot better. Torres has picked up passing in 1 of the last 3 games. They've had mixed fixtures to date, so if they could get some consistency in terms of their passing bonus, maybe he's somebody that be considering going forward.
What's your take on Trippier and the Newcastle defence?
Obviously, I don't think that I still maintain that he's not an amazing Sky asset, and certainly he's not essential for me at all. Particularly, they've just played the 2 worst teams in the league, Burnley and Sheffield United. I wouldn't be expecting Trippier to pick up passing bonus regularly throughout the season, and probably not any other sorts of bonus. And I picked up tackle bonus at the weekend. They do have nice fixtures over the next 3, but then beyond that, the fixtures look pretty rough for kind of period of 7 or 8 games before turning decent again as well. So I'm still not, I'd mentioned there, I've kind of thought my overhaul team and what I'm transitioning moves wise, get fixture gains, bring a player in. He's still not on my radar to bring in.
And Son, are you as high on him as me and maybe some others?
Yeah, I think so. Like 3 shots on target again at the weekend. I think a nice double up with him and Maddison is something that I'm looking at. Whether I do it this weekend and forego a fixture gain, which is something I don't often do.
We talked about this a couple of times, haven't we?
Or wait until the Monday. Yeah, like even thinking of whether you do the switch from like kind of Ruben Diaz if your formation allows. I think it looks like you get the same net gains out of it in isolation, because you bring Son in and then you miss Diaz against Arsenal and then against Brighton at home. But I think it's often overlooked that you're actually removing the captaincy from someone else. So if you've already got Maddison, it's not you're just losing Diaz for those 2 games and then gaining Son twice against Luton for doubling up. They also remove the extra points that you would have got from the captain that you did have in there. So say you're going to captain Maddison, bringing Son in for Diaz in that situation, you lose Maddison's points because he would normally get doubled up, as well as then Diaz's next 2 games. I'm not saying that I'm definitely not going to do it, but it would be that I'd be considering if you were making a move there. If you've got the budget to move from another player who doesn't have as good a Sky asset perhaps as Diaz, that makes it a little bit more easier than there. If you've got a Wonye or one of the Chelsea guys, and you've got enough in the bank to move up, and perhaps part of that's a chain move by getting Baird in on Tuesday night, and then frees up the money to remove a low key asset, if you like, to bring Son in.
Let's have a look at the fixture list, and in particular 2 games. So we've got one this evening, obviously, Fulham and Chelsea, and then we've got Luton and Burnley tomorrow. We had some questions about what to do this evening for Fulham and Chelsea for those without sorry, without a captain, and also if you had like a 1, 2, 3 of captains for that game, what would they be? So, firstly, I think we mentioned last week, Thiago Silva potentially one to bring in. I'm gotta say, I'm not really convinced myself. I think after they got Fulham and Burnley, which could be quite decent, but after that, straight away they go Arsenal, Brentford, and Spurs, who do expect. Like, I wouldn't expect many clean sheets in that personally. I don't get the passing, but so firstly, would you go to Silva or not?
I think my order of preference would be Silva, Sterling, and then maybe even Leno as my third choice. If I was doing some sort of hokey cokey with goalkeepers, if I had a keeper that I didn't want, bringing Leno for a couple of games, they play Sheffield United at home on Saturday, and then move on again to someone I'd want longer term, maybe Areola. If you're wanting to retain some budget there, could be an option. But yeah, if I didn't have an asset and I wanted to get someone in, I still think the floor of Silva's kind of starting on 5 points, if you like, would be. I'd have little regret in doing that, even if he only picked up the 10 points and conceded 1, picked up 5 points, doubled to 10. I'd be more comfortable doing that than taking a high risk player. I'm getting 2 doubled and then looking to move on straight away.
And
they do have Burnley. They do have Burnley at home. Sorry, it's away on Saturday. They've got Burnley, so you could chain it that way as well.
In that one, and then move on maybe on the Sunday if you wanted. They've got like a 2-0 over a lot of teams, all the top teams actually, apart from Man United. Can we class Man United as a top team anymore? I don't know. And Luton and Burnley obviously playing tomorrow evening. Bayer has been on everyone's lips in the last week or so. I still think I'm making a move. Estepinan's finally leaving my team for Bayer. What do you think on this fixture?
Yeah, I think I might end up with a 6.6 double up. I've got Nakamba already. And yeah, I think it just allows it allows a lot of flexibility moving forward. I'm really, really not keen on messing about with Saka, Salah, Haaland. One of the reasons that I was so successful last year was putting the budget enablers in at the start. So I started off with Polina. I've gotten someone else, I can't remember. I think it was McAllister. McAllister was really cheap, wasn't he? I brought in McAllister relatively early. And what that allowed me to do was to have Kane partnered with Haaland, partnered with Salah.
It was those three, wasn't it? And there were lots of managers who were really struggling. They were missing holes and burning transfers. Where you just sit with all three of them and you're laughing at you.
And I'm keen to try and adopt something similar. And I think with Aaron, based on his fixtures, I think he'll do okay. Even if he's not keeping clean sheets, getting the 5 points or 4 points, they do look good for passing in the teams that don't play possession-based football, of which they've got a lot of fixtures against coming up. And there's also potential, I heard this on Planet FPL's podcast, there's potential for a Burnley Wolves single game day coming up as well. So
bit of December.
Yeah, fair enough. That is quite a distance away, but at the same time, I'm not going to be messing around transferring around 6.6 million players. So as long as he avoided a suspension or such, like if that was to happen, then I'd have that in place already. So yeah, just having that flexibility to then bring in Watkins, but not have to sacrifice Saka, Salah, Haaland. Yeah,
I think that in addition to all those points, which are really good points as well, it fills a defender spot because we've just talked about Watkins, Son, Haaland, potentially Alvarez, Saka, Salah, Bissouma, Nakamba, whoever else. I think a lot of us will still be on 3 at the back, so it fills that spot nicely as well, doesn't it? Where's Nakamba?
Yeah, who's the wanted defenders? Even if you include Trippier in this just now, so
we've had loads of questions about getting rid of Dunk.
Yeah, exactly. So there's
exactly.
So having Bear in on like a back 3 and not having to mess around there, I think is viable. So even with Nakamba that's listening, I'm in that position. I'm thinking of potentially doubling up, having the 2.
A quick question from Sam Guy: would you skip tonight if you had no cover? Would you skip if you had no cover?
If there's a player that you want rid of, like say you've got Dunk and you're not particularly happy, like they play Liverpool and they play Brighton next, and then they don't play on the Saturday afterwards. They play on the Sunday against Fulham. You could bring them in. You could do something like bring Thiago Silva in for Dunk. They're round about the same price. Thiago Silva's 0.2 more, then move on to someone else. I'd likely do that rather than do nothing. But if there was nobody in my team that I wanted to get rid of, or that I could afford to do something like that with, then I would skip it.
Okay. One of Paul's favourite things to do, and I'm sure everyone is looking forward to this, is he likes to prepare a kind of overhaul team of if he was picking 11 players now, what would it look like? So we don't get many of these, so enjoy. And we're going to flick back and forth a little bit between the screens, and Paul is going to talk through his plans for the coming weeks.
So I caveat this with, I'm basing it off my own team as well. So if there's players in there that I don't mind, I wouldn't necessarily be transferring them in or such like. So yeah, I had some time on Saturday to think through this, and there's an abundance of midfielders, and the Campbell's a good placeholder. I think that I'm happy to hold on to him now. He's regularly hitting tackling bonus, which is what I got him in for at the start of the season, and he offers the flexibility in the team. So I'm pretty happy with that. But looking at the midfield slots, I think I want to double up on the Spurs, Maddison and Son double up in there. I don't want to get rid of Saka, and I don't want to get rid of Salah either. So that almost takes up my 5 midfielder slots already. I've got 4 of them in place, so it's a case of bringing one in. I also not going to mess around with Haaland, so keep him in there. And I'd mentioned earlier on, I think Watkins for the Aston Villa's fixture run and for the singles coming up. So I've got 5-2 already, and therefore it takes to defence and goalkeeper. And there's not a lot of budget left. So the 6.6 for Jordan Bear is perfect. He slots nicely into there. The 2 other defenders, I've already got Saliba in place, and I don't have Dunk just now.
What?
which has worked out incredibly well for me.
So lucky.
When last week came about and I thought that he was going to miss the Sunday game, I moved him on for Alvarez, and
that's where you get at least points from.
And then I got Alvarez at the weekend. But I was a couple of transfers in the bank on you, so I was happy to use one last weekend. So
sneaky.
But I will bring Dunk back in because they've got a really good fixture run beyond.
Yeah, Monday the 20th.
Yeah, Gameweek 12, I think it is.
Brighton. Sunday the 29th of October on the Sunday as well. Home to Fulham. Yeah. Kicks on from there.
And then I've got enough money to retain. I've got Onana and goals, and there's still a lot of options, a lot of flexibility in what I can do there. Martinez has really nice fixtures, and there's multiple hop-on points for him. Areola's similarly. So I've got Onana on one of the 2 of those I can downgrade and pick up, but I don't need to downgrade because I've got enough money to retain Onana there. So I can get to that team in 3 moves. One of them doesn't involve a fixture gain, so I will need to consider that at the weekend. And what I want to do there. But the other 2, I've got fixture gain, so used Ian Padden's planner, mapped it all out. As I say, I've got options and how I move things around. So who do I move to get Bear on Tuesday night? I've still got 3 options and something I'll consider after tonight's game and have a think about. But I actually might keep Colwell for a little while longer.
He's getting a lot of stick, but his points per million are not too bad. They're all right. Yeah. He's kept.
He might be the one because he's 7.5 and Dunk's 8.3. If I can get to that stage, that might be the move that I then make and upgrade him to Dunk on that Sunday.
And Chelsea are only going to improve as well, aren't they? And if they do switch to a back 4, for example, the way he's been playing, the praise he's been getting, he may actually come into the middle of a back 4, which case
I just hope it's not
passing as well.
I just hope it's not Cucurella at right back and then him at left back, and that Disasi moves out to right back and Cucurella comes in at left back, and then he moves in left centre back.
I think it would be Disasi at right back.
Maybe Cucurella did play right back when he came on last game, but yeah, I'm in the same position. Obviously, I hope that happens too. So yeah, that's if I was picking an overhaul team right now, maybe that wouldn't be exactly how it looks, particularly the goalkeeper, maybe just the goalkeeper actually, and everything else seems okay. And knowing that I don't have Duncan, that I'm going to get Duncan, it works for my team and how I've planned it out. But I think that this method has served me really, really well, in particular last season when I was thinking about future plans, getting in players, but also making sure that my team structure allowed it. Say Ian Parent's planner is really good for that. It allows you to make sure that you're not foregoing budget at one point that you need to retain it, or you're moving to a formation that doesn't allow the future move as well. So I do have a bit of flexibility with that, and things will change. You know, an injury will come, or a suspension will come, or
every week,
a bit
mate,
of form will happen.
Every
just
week,
like to have that.
someone becomes essential, don't they?
And I just like to have that 4 week, like kind of 3-4 week rolling plan, if you like, and then I reassess it as and when I need to.
Couple of comments in the chat. Jason says, Bissouma having 4 yellows, does it change anyone's plans looking forwards? Potentially. So I've got him. Hopefully now the fixtures are a bit easier. The next 3 anyway. Hopefully he can stave it off. I'll have to have a look. I think I am tempted to go back to Nakamba, but I don't think I will.
Through gritted teeth.
Yeah, I mean he's matched him for, well, he's almost matched him for points. I think during the period.
It's a flexibility it allows, but then that was part of the reason for having him in the first place. I could just, for those listening on podcasts, Fergie's rolling his eyes and giving me daggers.
I can't wait to record Nip and a Half. Yeah, I don't know. I'll see. I'll just see how it works. It's kind of if and when it happens, right? You know, if it happens, and you know, there's a long break to next game, because what happened with Rodri was just so it happened when he got his red card. It just so happened other teams had a 5-for-1. Now that's not always going to be the case, is it? So we'll just see kind of as and when it happens. Amandeep says Bayer is on 3 yellows. That is, you know, I think that's all right. That you know, when he gets to 5. He's not there for the points. He's there to.
I wouldn't even transfer him out.
Exactly. He's there to cover one captaincy, and he's there as an enabler. That's his role in it. And
as long as Bissouma doesn't restrict you to make moves based on budget or formation or something like that, then I would probably just see that.
This is what I'm thinking now. Is we've got incredibly similar plans, but you've got 0.7 on me with Nakamba against Bissouma. And Sam D. Taylor, really good question. Not Rodri long term, Paul. That is a good point. Without Rodri in that midfield,
the midfield's just hard to place just now, and it could be that one of the Spurs players moves on, because I like the price points in that overhaul team as well. I don't like the formation. I don't really like 3-5-2, but as I say, based on the plethora of midfield options, it's pretty hard to avoid that at present. But either of the Spurs assets can be downgraded to. Oh wait, Maddison's same price, 9.3. Rodri,
roughly they're within like 0.1, 0.2 of each other. And finally, there's a couple of other questions I wanted to ask. Thoughts on Romero?
Yeah, I think
like Romero. I think he could be one of those 3 or 4 defenders.
I think on a player that's rash and can get bookings like Romero, when you've got a manager that plays to his strengths, like I think Postecoglou is, you almost negate that based on the pros outweigh the cons.
I haven't checked the last 2 games, but the first 5 fixtures he didn't make a foul. Neither did Van de Ven, which is just incredible. Neither made a foul, which is unbelievable, really.
So I think he's a good option. He suffers the same problem for me. I could get him instead of Dunk. He has that same problem that if I wanted to start making the small moves now to get to where I am, that I don't get the fixture gain at the weekend. But he's certainly somebody, if things didn't go to plan, then could get him in earlier. Maybe he's an option for you instead of Saliba,
potentially,
and frees you up 1.1 or 1.2 million as well.
Who is your keeper of choice as it stood now? Gun to your head. Onana's injured. He's not injured. If he was injured, you had to pick a keeper now. Who would it be?
I think I'd have Pope if budget wasn't an issue. Based on my team, I think Areola based on them being 6.6 million, and that frees up even more cash for future moves.
I think I might try and get to Alisson. I haven't worked out a plan yet, but I love him as a Sky asset. He's and it covers Liverpool defence as well.
I didn't ask you to cover this in the pod, but I have been thinking about it recently. What another thing that served me well last year was when the template hits strong in Sky, it is very hard to make up progress and make it. There is a segue from the point that you just made. By the way, I'm just not. This isn't out of nowhere, and I had been thinking about it earlier that you want to be the first. You want to set the template, right? You want to be one step ahead, and there's a bit of gambling with that, but like educated gambling. But I think it's going to be difficult for people to get on the Liverpool defence post international break. But if you look at their fixtures, they are incredible.
Yeah, they're insane.
And a double up that involved Alisson and Van Dijk, you would be so far ahead of the curve if you did it on the first available opportunity. Like if you got injuries, first game back, they play Everton at home, or if it's on this Saturday afterwards, which Nottingham Forest. Oh, it's on the Sunday.
Sunday,
on Gameweek
29th. Yeah, jumping on there.
Like,
yeah.
There's multiple opportunities there to move on. If you got two Liverpool defenders, say this isn't part of my current plan, but if you got two Liverpool defenders there and they kept 2 clean sheets out the next 3 or 3 out the next 4 or something like that, which looking at the fix, I know Liverpool haven't been defending particularly great. Van Dijk has that fallback of starting on 5 points in most games rather than
Alisson gets saves nearly every game anyway as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So even like if you didn't fancy Trent, like a Van Dijk Alisson double up, you'd be well ahead of the curve, and people would be chasing to hit that template, and then they're using the transfers to catch you up, and then you've got the 20 points or 30 points on them. It happened quite a few times last season. The McAllister was probably a good example. I was on McAllister early, and then he became a staple of the template thereafter.
Good stuff. Let's have a quick look at this weekend. Only 2 game days, obviously, before the international break. Saturday the 7th night. We mentioned this last week. We get to see the Luton and Spurs lineup, which is brilliant news in regards to Son in particular. Interestingly, for those who haven't seen, Richarlison did start on the weekend, but Richarlison started on the left and Son started up front, which I think we'll see a theme, to be honest. I do think Son will continue to come off early while he's still nursing this knock, but just while he's on the pitch, he's just so dangerous. United and Brentford at 3 o'clock. Fulham, Sheffield United, Everton, Bournemouth, Burnley and Chelsea, and then Palace and Forest at 5:30. Thoughts on this one for captaincy?
Son is my first choice, and then Maddison's my second choice. Really have a think about, like, for those listening and planning on getting a player in without the fixture again. We'll have a look at the midweek game between Burnley and Luton and see if there's an opportunity there for a long-term planned move where you're freeing up the money to do something that therefore you're not having to sacrifice a Saka or a Salah, or I don't think people would do it with Salah necessarily. I think they would possibly do it with Saka, knowing it's Arsenal, Man City, and then away to Chelsea next week. But I mean, like, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? And that might work. It's just not my preference. And if you do want to retain those players and want to hold on to the transfers, using a couple now to set your team structure up and to do that might make sense.
Sunday, Wolves and Villa, Midlands derby, West Ham and Newcastle, Brighton, Liverpool. We get to see the team sheets for there. Just to touch on Liverpool, that Spurs Liverpool Luis Diaz goal, pretty insane, right? Any thoughts on that or not? Just
see, I watched the match of the day, and like, after having not seen any of the talk during the day or stuff like that, it's just incompetence. Right? Just
unbelievable. It's
I'm not necessarily against VAR, but like, see, if you implemented the technology they had in the World Cup, like, I know that the Premier League turned it down, but that was conclusive, right? And they've got that shield like that, almost like that. Do you know, it's like from one of those adventure films where they're breaking into, like, the cat burglars are trying to get the vases. If they had that, it would be like pretty straightforward, pretty conclusive straight away.
Being a Spurs fan for 40 years, right? We haven't had any luck for 40 years, right? And finally, the Pedro Mendes goal in 2012. No,
I remember that. Yeah.
I think this is the closest we've got to any kind of redemption. It wasn't. Was it 2012? It might have been earlier than that. Actually, it might be like 2009. I can't remember, but yeah. Pedro Mendes against United when he's like basically touching the back of the net, he scooped it out, and we would have beaten United, which at the time for us was ridiculous. That's some kind of redemption, but obviously absolutely shocking. Like, it was
absolutely
unbelievable bad. Did you see was it Turner kick Visser in the bollocks? Yeah. How was that not a penalty? Like, I just don't understand it for the life of me.
But what about the one? So I don't have Mbeumo and Sky, but that was a penalty, and then the handball in the first half.
I just don't understand what's going on. There seems to be this thing at the moment. I think that officials and fans are getting confused with this thing of that it wasn't on purpose. You know, like the handball in the area now has got to be seen to be, but
yeah, there's no such thing as deliberate handball anymore, right? Like that was the thing before. Bolt hand, remember bolt hand? You don't shout that when you're playing.
But there was like there was even I think yesterday I was arguing with a couple of my friends yesterday about the keeper incident, saying, well, he didn't mean to kick him, so it's not a foul. I'm like,
what
world are you in though? Like, that's never been any kind of rule in football. Like, it's very rare that someone means to foul someone. A foul is usually because someone's outfoxed them or has got their foot first.
There's like a cynical. They deem that as a cynical foul. Like when
it doesn't matter whether he meant to kick him. He absolutely leathered him right between the legs, nowhere near the ball.
Yeah, I thought it was too. Yeah, I thought they were both penalty. That and the handball was a penalty based on what's given these days.
So strange how what's happened to these rules. I just don't understand them. I never know what's a penalty or not anymore. Like, it's crazy. Anyway, we move on. I do feel for Liverpool, even as a Spurs fan, it was just as you say, just absolute incompetence. So yeah, very very unfortunate. But as a Spurs fan, I'll take it.
I thought the Curtis Jones one was a red card, and I thought
now that's my beef with Liverpool fans.
And I thought Jota, whilst the first one's obviously not a booking, like. You just don't make tackles like that after you're on a booking.
Just quickly on the Curtis Jones one. So this was my beef with Liverpool fans. I was empathising with them yesterday about the Luis Diaz stuff, and then they went, "Oh, and the Curtis Jones wasn't a red card." Like, how Basuma's leg stayed intact, I don't actually know. It was like a horrendous tackle. Horrendous. Over the top of the ball, be it accidentally or not, his foot is way too high. It's at least a foot off the floor. It's gone directly into his shin and his ankle, and they're trying to say it's not a red card. I'm like, come on now. Anyway, beef with Liverpool fans over. Only some, obviously. Some uneducated ones. I don't want to start a war with Liverpool fans. Absolutely not.
I think you just have.
I know, I didn't mean to. Curtis Jones, red card. Luis Diaz. Very, very unfortunate. We've had a few more questions around Dunk. Should we take Dunk out? I'm certainly not, because I know I'm going to want him back in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. How about yourself, Walt?
I think there's an argument to do it if you're chaining around and like have a look at your future plans. So if him coming down to Bear and you want Bear in long term works, and then that frees up the money to get Son in at the weekend, and then you've still retained the money or the position to move back to Dunk on the following Sunday. If that's your loose plan and that works for you, then I think that's a good use of the transfers to do that. But make sure that you've got that contingency of how you tuck it all together in the end without having to then use another one or two transfers to completely restructure or start taking out players that you don't want to take out.
Sorry, we didn't say about the best captain for Sunday. Apologies, all. Haaland away to Arsenal, or would you be more tempted by Salah at Brighton? That's looking good. Salah at Brighton looks better, I think.
Yeah, I'll probably captain Haaland.
You look at all these things. Whenever Man City plays,
I've just got this feeling that Brighton won't get turned over 2 times in a row. I don't know.
No either. Yeah, I don't know. I'll see how I feel on the day.
I wouldn't. I'm not going to be making a move for Watkins, or I wouldn't make a move for Diaby there either, on the basis that it's international break right after it, and they play on the following Sunday rather than the Saturday.
Really
if they played on the Saturday after the international break, then I would be more tempted perhaps to make an early move there. But with that, Gabbiadini. I just remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the OGs remember Gabbiadini.
And the final question or questions were around Liverpool players. We were asked if Darwin can potentially cover Salah and time for Trent and Van Dijk. You've already touched on, Alisson and Van Dijk. I haven't seen a lot of Trent. I know he's missed a game or two. I'm not convinced that he's worth it over Alisson or Van Dijk. And yeah, what's your general thoughts?
I like Darwin Núñez. I do think at some point in time he will hit like a monster score or go on a decent purple patch. But he's not an elite finisher, and he will probably forever underperform his XG.
I'm not sure about that, mate. I have this argument with Adam Hopcroft all the time about players develop. They develop. I had this argument with him 2 years ago around Ivan Toney and Ollie Watkins as well. Players do develop.
That's fine. I'm not disagreeing with your point. I just don't know that he's going to develop that well in 2 or 3 weeks to get
2 or 3 weeks is fair.
To be able to cover Salah. Do you?
No, but
that's my argument.
No.
That's where my argument's going.
It's more minutes.
I wouldn't have him as cover.
It's more minutes for me is the problem. If he's starting every game, if you knew he was starting number 9 every game, I would say he could cover him. I honestly do, but he rotates. I know Gakpo's out now, and he for a few weeks, and Jota's banned for 1 game, so he's going to start the next one. But after that, again, it could like. Well,
then you worry like when they play Everton, the early kickoff after.
You just don't know who's going to play. You have no idea, do you?
South America, so I don't think he's good cover for him. Could you do a double up? Absolutely, I think that could be a nice differential for sure.
Cool. Thanks for the questions, everyone. I think we've managed to answer most of them as we've gone throughout the pod. That is it for us for this week and for this side of the second international break. Thank you all so much for those watching and listening. Your continued support is much, much appreciated. Thank you so much, Paul. Where can people find you?
On Twitter at Paul McAnulty 1. It's MCANULTY.
And my handle on Twitter is at FFH_Fergi. If you like what you watched, please press the like button. It would be much, much appreciated. Remember to subscribe in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast versions and leave some comments. We will be back in 2 weeks. We're not back next week, obviously, because there's no games, international break. So we'll be previewing Sky Game Week 11, 2 weeks today. Wish you the very, very best of luck for Sky Game Week 9. Enjoy the international break, and goodbye for now.